Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing my full-length review for the Daredevil Born Again series. I had a relatively interesting experience with this show overall, and I kind of want to dive deep into it. And first off, I'm going to go ahead and just do a little review of the finale, because I think without a doubt the finale is one of the best episodes of television that Marvel Disney Plus has ever done. And I want to just go ahead and give credit where credit's due, because that episode is phenomenal. And I am going to probably talk about some things about this show that I was not a huge fan of, and I do kind of want to just go ahead and address that I did have a lot of problems with this season as a whole, and I don't want to just quickly brush past those. So that being said, like I said, I enjoyed the last episode. I enjoyed episode 8. I think episode 1 is incredible. I think that the bank heist episode was phenomenal, and there's definitely like moments of greatness throughout this entire show. So I do want to go ahead and say, overall, I think that the show gets a solid thumbs up from me. If I had to give it an overall rating, it probably would have like 3.5, 4 stars probably. But that being said, like I said, we're going to start with a review of the finale, and then we'll dive into the deeper parts of my slight issues with this show. Okay, so starting off with the finale, I do want to go ahead and say I think that the pacing of these last 2 episodes was incredibly interesting, and honestly, I would totally love it if with the next season of Daredevil Born Again, they could do something similar. Like, if Daredevil Season 2 all takes place within the time span of maybe 3 weeks, and they have a couple of episode arcs where it's just one long night like this one was, I would actually be obsessed with that. I think that that would be absolutely incredible, and I think that it really helps out when we have a 59-minute long episode and everything that happens in those 59 minutes takes place over the course of 3 hours. It really does a good job of putting into perspective what all is going on, how intense the situation is, and I like the urgency that these last 2 episodes had. I like the fact that since the moment that Bullseye broke out of prison or whatever, everything was just go, and I think that that is important. I think that that pacing was phenomenal. I think that it helped the action finally lived up to some of the original 3 seasons of Netflix's Daredevil. I think that the Punisher, getting to go full Punisher, was absolutely fantastic, and I really hope that he becomes a season regular next year. I know he's getting his own special presentation, and that there's not a whole lot necessarily saying that he's going to be in the next season, but I definitely feel like right now he's the best friend that Matt has, and their little team dynamic is really interesting. And I think that if Daredevil ends up going down a darker path in season 2, which it kind of seems like he might, that having Punisher with him is going to be really interesting. And I really think that by episode 3 or episode 4 of next season, Matt Murdock should kill somebody, realize it's kind of a freeing thing, and then really go hard into that for the rest of the season until he could potentially meet somebody like Spider-Man in Spider-Man 4, and then he can kind of go back to his old ways of not killing people. But I think that there's kind of a breaking point here, right? Everything going on with the martial law, everything going on with Kingpin being full Kingpin again, and completely putting on display that he is kind of a monster. I think that we have to have a Daredevil that is willing to go the extra mile, and I think that they've been slowly setting it up this season that that's something that's potentially going to happen. And I just love the back and forth between him and Punisher so much. I think that John Bernthal and Charlie Cox have just an incredible chemistry, and every single scene that they have together is phenomenal. And this entire finale, with them working together as much as they did, was fantastic. I like the kind of sense of security that it gives a little bit. Obviously, in Daredevil, something that you like about it is that he is just a human, so he could definitely die at any given moment, and same thing with the Punisher. But the fact that when they're together, it's kind of a sigh of relief, because it's they're just about to absolutely kick ass together. And I think that that's awesome. I think that the action sequences of them together in Matt's apartment was phenomenal. I think that the choreography for it is just incredible, and getting to see them fighting together again would be really cool. There is, spoiler alert, some set photos that are coming out from season 2, and we do see that Matt is going to be working, well, I'm assuming he's working with Bullseye, and I think that that's going to be a really interesting dynamic. I want to see exactly how that plays out, but I think that that's very interesting. I'm really excited to see kind of how that dynamic works. And I've seen a lot of people online saying that they want to see a Punisher versus Bullseye fight sequence. And I do think that that would also be insanely cool. And I can imagine that being a cool 5-minute long fight sequence. That could be something really epic. That being said, that's not what I'm currently talking about. I'm sorry, I'm getting way ahead of myself right now. But yeah, so overall highlights from the finale that I want to talk about, the sequence where he's talking to Karen and he's like, we need an army. I think a lot of people are really disappointed because at the end of that episode, they go off to show like a scene of Matt in a room with a bunch of different people and none of them are, the defenders. And I think a lot of people are like, oh wow, that's his army. It's just going to be these random cops. And like, he does obviously say in the speech that like, we're taking our city back. We're the people of New York. We're the city that lives without fear. And like, that's an epic speech. But I definitely think that there's no way that they're not bringing back a single defender for the show. I think it is going to be really interesting. I'm seeing a lot of people saying that they need to bring Moon Knight into this. And as much as I do kind of want Moon Knight in this, they kind of screwed us over with the fact that he lives in the UK for some reason. So like him just randomly being in New York now wouldn't necessarily make sense. I don't know. I think that would be interesting though. I would really love to see Moon Knight in the show. I've been begging for more Moon Knight because Moon Knight season 1, in my opinion, one of the best things Disney has produced since Endgame. But that being said, not going to go on a Moon Knight tangent right now. Characters I would have loved to see in that bar scene, though, if we were going to potentially have it be like this big, oh my god, this is the team for the next season moment. Echo has had so much history with Fisk over the last couple of years. She has a little bit of a history with Daredevil. Seeing her join Team Daredevil would be really, really fun. I think that Alago Cox is absolutely phenomenal. And I think that her role in Hawkeye was incredible as kind of like a side character where you don't know exactly what the deal is, but every action sequence they just had such a dominant presence. And I think that them being in the show would be absolutely phenomenal. And then I wanted to see Kate Bishop really badly. I feel like Kate Bishop is somebody who, at this point, if you're a vigilante and you live in New York, I feel like you have to run into some of the other New York vigilantes. And Kate Bishop would have been one of the best cameos to have because that could connect it to Kamala Khan. That could potentially connect it to, Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye. And it could potentially just like really branch out and fully make this feel super connected to the MCU because for the first time ever, we're seeing Daredevil interact with somebody who is, well, I guess She-Hulk kind of is. Yeah, never mind. He did interact with She-Hulk, but just seeing him interact with somebody who like is so close to the Avengers and has been in the Avengers lineup would be really interesting. That being said, obviously they didn't do it here. I'm really hoping we get at least Luke Cage. Jessica Jones would be really cool. I actually would like to see Danny Brand again. I think that actor has been very vocal about the fact that like he would do better. He learned from his mistakes and he really wants a second chance. And I think he deserves a second chance. I also did just finish watching Ted Lasso though. And like a big message of that final season is giving people a second chance. I digress. Once again, going off on a little tangent. That's my bad. Alrighty, so I still feel like I have not gotten to a lot of the good things about the finale, but I do kind of want to backtrack here and start talking about the entire season as a whole because I feel like the entire season did a lot of things that really disappointed me and upset me a lot. For one, we started off with the trial of Hector Ayala, which did a good job of showcasing, hey, by the way, Matt's still a lawyer. And it's one of those things where the first 3 seasons of Daredevil, I love them. I think they're great. They're near and dear to my heart. But there are so many sequences where like they're taking on an interesting client and they're going to be doing a lot of really interesting lawyer stuff. And instead of Matt doing any form of closing statements or actually being a lawyer, it usually ends up going to Foggy, and Foggy was the person who ended it out. So I really was excited to see Matt potentially having to be a lawyer more and step up and actually be that great lawyer. And we don't get a whole lot of that. I understand that, him being Daredevil, that is kind of what they want to focus on. And especially him like being dragged back into that life. I think that they did a good job in episode 6, having the kind of sequence where he has to go back to being Daredevil and having that parallel with Wilson Fisk having to go back into a life of crime. I think that it's fun. I think that they did a good job with it. I'm just thinking that like after having an entire episode, the Hector Ayala trial was incredible. And in my opinion, the dialogue of it was incredible. The whole sequence where they had their witness and they had to have him in a secret car and like secretly get him to the courtroom so that he could potentially get there alive without having any complications. I thought that was fantastic. I think that the sequence where Matt outed the White Tiger, very interesting, very unique. And I feel like there's a lot of different kind of like morally interesting questions that they could have dove into here, but they kind of didn't. And I think that there's just a lot of like weird character inconsistencies because you could tell that they were reworking the show. So obviously Matt seemed like originally he was going to have more to learn in this season, and I feel like he kind of didn't. He just reverted back to his own ways, which is fine. We love Daredevil as Daredevil. That's awesome. But I also feel like in the original version of the show, he might have learned different lessons and potentially just actually became a good lawyer instead of constantly just telling people, oh, I'm a really good lawyer. That being said, I still like it. I still think that this show is solid. But you can really see it's like the character changes that I'm talking about and stuff like Heather Glenn. In the beginning of the show, she's very like wide-eyed curious. She's like, oh my god, vigilantes are so interesting. I think that they have to have like, you know, something wrong with them, but also like what's the brain thought process, what makes them want to do the things that they want to do. And she's literally like talking to Matt about like, oh my god, can I sit down and have an interview with Frank Castle? Can I have an interview with Daredevil? And she kind of wants to like pick their brain and kind of understand why the vigilantes are the way that they are, and for her to very quickly kind of like turn around in the last couple of episodes and compare Daredevil to a serial killer and compare, you know, that entire like thing with like, if they wear a mask, they're an absolute coward and they're a little boy. It seems like so out of nowhere. And I understand like trauma sometimes does that. You change things a lot, but it just seems like one of those things where it's just like they had written her a specific way for the original show, and then they wanted her to kind of be more of a, like, I don't want to say like an enemy, but like an obstacle more or less for Matt, where he has this love connection and he's trying to, you know, potentially move on from Karen. And so he has this girl and he's talking to her and they're dating and they're having a good time. They never really had that much chemistry. I think this is one of the like least like romantic interests that Matt has had chemistry with. Like, I think that chemistry wise, they did not click as well. But I think that, you know, them being a relationship and then like the thing with her being, you know, Fisk's therapist was interesting. And I think that there's a lot that could have kind of went somewhere with that. I think that in season 2, they have a chance to fix her character. So I'm not going to harp on it too much. It just seemed like such like a quick, like 360 for the character. And I'm really intrigued to see where that's going to go, because I really don't see any way you could potentially redeem that character. And I really don't see any massive benefits to them being like Fisk's personal therapist and they're on Team Fisk now. I don't know. Like, I was expecting there to be some big reveal at some point where she was going to be like, I know Matt Murdock is Matt Murdock. Nope. I was expecting her to at some point be like, I know you're Daredevil, and like there be some like crazy discussion or something like that, and that didn't happen. And I don't know. I think that the whole Matt being Daredevil and like the secret identity thing is something that they usually play a lot into, and when they didn't this season, I was a little thrown off by it. That being said, that's not a problem at all. In fact, a lot of the things that I'm going to complain about with the show are very massive nitpicks, because for the most part, the show is really good. I think that the dialogue is relatively great. I think that the episodic nature of it is fantastic. I do wish we got more for the crime families, because like all of the issues that Wilson Fisk and Vanessa are having early on in the season, they don't feel like they ever fully really get resolved. They just kind of are like, oh my god, you kidnapped the guy that I was cheating on you with, and you've been keeping him captive, and you kept your promise and you didn't kill him. That's so romantic. And then she shoots and kills him or whatever, and then all of a sudden all their problems are gone. It's interesting, for sure. It's really interesting. That being said, he crushes a guy's head at the end of the season. He's definitely back to his old ways. It just, the last 2 episodes feel so not well integrated that it's been throwing me off, and I'm going to rewatch the entire series and potentially make even another video/review of it later, but it's like so weird. And then the same thing with like Muse in the first couple of episodes being set up to be like this really massive threat, and then when he dies, it's so anticlimactic, and it's just like, oh, by the way, the episode's over and we're never going to talk about him again. And when they revealed, oh, by the way, this is a serial killer, he's killed like 60-something people, and immediately Matt is able to find his location and beat the shit out of him. There's so much missed potential with Muse. I've seen a lot of people who are still theorizing that it's going to be proven to be Daniel Blake. And I will admit, I don't want to necessarily dive into that, like, theory. But when he was wearing the exact pair of suspenders that Muse is wearing, because here's the thing. I'm a guy, I wear suspenders all the time. I'm going to stand up and give you an example. Most suspenders that I own are just the one clips. There's just one clip that goes in right there and right there, right? Muse was specifically wearing a pair of suspenders that has 2 clips. So they would go, you know, 2 on this side and then 2 on this side. And when Daniel Blake stood up and he was sitting at that desk being all like high and mighty and like he has this little snarky evil look on his face, he had specifically a pair of suspenders that had the 2 clips. And obviously, I'm not like a fashion guru. I'm not somebody who has like a super high paying job. So like maybe that's just like more high end suspenders are like that. But I thought that was really interesting. And it's like one of those things where it's like, it's like, in my mind, it's a Chekhov's gun, and they focused on it for a little too long, and it has to be important, when in reality, it's probably not at all. I don't know. I love the theory, though, that Muse is still going to be out and about, and that he's going to be a problem next season, and people are going to be like, wait, I thought this guy died. Wait, hold up, we watched this guy die. Wait a minute, the task force killed this guy, and then, like, he's still alive? That'd be interesting. Obviously, though, Daniel Blake doesn't seem to have any motivation to be an artist, so it doesn't make sense. And then also, they really, like, brought in this character, had him go to Heather for no reason whatsoever. He was just kind of insane and felt like he had some kind of connection with her, and then kill him off immediately. They so underdeveloped that storyline, and it could have been such a great storyline because he's such an interesting character. And I hate that we do get one scene where like he killed a couple of women and like their actual bodies were a part of the artwork, but the fact that we didn't get more of that does kind of upset me a little bit, because there's just a throwaway line that's like, he's killed 60 people. And we didn't get to see the majority of it or see the aftermath of the majority of it. We never got to see the giant Daredevil Born Again mural, which I was really expecting to see after he got into his fight with Daredevil. I thought he was going to start taunting Daredevil. I don't know. That being said, overall, I enjoyed the show for the most part. I think that the death of Foggy is really depressing, and I still am very kind of upset that it happened, mostly just because we finally have him in the MCU where things can be more fantastical and it feels a lot more like a comic book. And we're deep in the multiverse saga, and we potentially could be seeing a superior Iron Man soon. And I really, really wanted the sequence where in the comics, I can't remember exactly what the comic book run is right now, but there's a really iconic story where Daredevil gets his vision back, and then he sprints across New York, and it's this really big deal, like, oh my god, he just got his vision back. What is he doing? Where is he going? And then he knocks on an apartment door, and Foggy opens the door. And he is so excited to just see his face. And Foggy's like freaking out. He's like, oh my god, what's going on, Matt? Are you okay? And he just like hugs him, and he's just like, I just wanted to see you. And then, you know, he's staring at his face, and then it goes back to his like sonar vision. Heartbreaking. I wanted to see it in live action. I think that those two have played Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson so well and have had the incredible chemistry for so long that that scene probably would have ripped my heart out if we got to see it. That being said, that was just, you know, not in the cards for us, I guess. I'm still gonna cry about it though. It's okay. But yeah, that being said, overall, this season was relatively good. I don't have that much more that I wanted to nitpick. That was pretty much it. Like I said, still really like the show. I'd probably give it a solid 4 stars. I think that the pacing really threw me off a lot. I think that the fact that they just kind of disregarded Muse immediately kind of sucked. I think the fact that we saw the death of Hector Ayala and then they kind of didn't do anything about it for the next like 3 episodes was weird. And then in the final episode where they just kind of are like, oh, this is Cole North. He is definitely the guy that killed Hector Ayala. And then we didn't even get to know by the end of the episode if he died. Like, we assume he did because there was a giant explosion. But we didn't get to see his death, like, on screen. Kind of underwhelming, kind of disappointing. Who knows? But yeah, that being said, that was it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much watching. And if you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe. And I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Bow, bow, bow.